The first city buses looked almost nothing like the ones you ride today. The engine sat up front, right behind the driver, just like any truck. That layout worked for decades. Then, sometime around the 1950s, engineers started quietly moving the engine to the back of the bus. No fanfare, no announcement, just a change that spread through transit systems across the country until it became the default and stayed there. Why? That's what we're getting into right here on Simple Why. Before we get into the engine, it helps to understand what a transit bus actually is and why it has different rules than your average truck or van. A transit bus is a heavy-duty passenger vehicle built to run the same route dozens of times a day, carry standing passengers, stop every few blocks, and do all of that reliably for 12 to 15 years straight. That's a very different job than hauling freight across the country. The earliest motor buses, going back to the early 1900s, were basically motorized wagons. The engine sat at the front. The driver sat above or behind it, and passengers loaded through a door at the rear. This layout, called a front engine, front radiator design, came directly from trucks. Makes sense because the first bus manufacturers were truck manufacturers. Here's the issue with a front engine bus. The engine takes up space, a lot of it. Sit it right behind or beside the driver, and you've got a large mechanical hump pushing up through the floor of the passenger cabin, right where people need to walk and stand. On a city bus, that hump created a stepped floor with raised sections toward the front. Passengers had to step up and over it. Elderly riders struggled. People with mobility issues had a harder time. And in an emergency, that raised section slowed evacuation. There was also a weight distribution problem. A heavy engine up front, combined with a full load of passengers in the back, created uneven stress on the front axle. In cities with heavy bus traffic, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, that meant faster wear on both the vehicle and the road. Something had to change. Moving the engine to the rear solves several of those problems at once, but it creates a few new ones. The way engineers handle those trade-offs is where it gets interesting. In a rear-engine bus, the diesel engine sits horizontally in a compartment at the very back, laid on its side, not standing upright. That's not how most engines are mounted, and it required a redesigned drivetrain. Think of it like tucking a filing cabinet under a bed instead of standing it in the corner of a room. You get the same storage, but you have to reach it differently. Because the engine is no longer under the passenger floor, the entire floor of the bus can sit lower and stay flat. Modern low-floor buses, common on city routes across the U.S., sit about 12 to 14 inches, 30 to 35 centimeters, off the ground at the front door. That's low enough to deploy a small ramp for wheelchair access without a lift mechanism. The cooling system also had to move. With the engine in the back, radiators are typically mounted on the roof or rear of the vehicle. Air gets pulled in through vents, circulated, and expelled, all without blocking the passenger cabin. It sounds like a minor detail. It's actually one of the trickier parts of the whole design. The rear engine layout does three things particularly well, and each one compounds on the others. First, weight distribution. With the engine at the back and passengers spread throughout the cabin, the load is more evenly split between the front and rear axles. The FHA sets axle weight limits: 20,000 pounds, 9,000 kilograms, for a single axle. And better distribution means buses can carry more passengers without violating those limits. Second, serviceability. The rear engine compartment on most modern transit buses opens completely from the back, like a hatchback. Mechanics can pull the entire powertrain without disassembling the interior. On an older front-engine layout, the same job often meant pulling the driver's cab. Third, and this is the one most people don't think about, safety. The driver is farther from the engine. In a front-end collision, there's more crumple space between the driver and anything mechanical. That matters at 40 miles per hour. Rear-engine layouts show up in more places than just city buses. School buses are the obvious comparison, and actually a useful contrast. Most American school buses still use a front-engine layout because their routes are different. They travel at lower speeds, make fewer stops per mile, and don't need the flat floor that city transit requires. The trade-offs land differently when the job is different. Motor coaches. The long-distance buses you'd take from one city to another went rear-engine decades ago. The flat floor creates valuable luggage space underneath the passenger cabin, which is a selling point for that kind of service. And then there's the Ferrari 308. Yes, sports cars. The same principle, engine in the back for weight balance, shows up in performance vehicles for completely different reasons. Same solution, totally different problem. And honestly, that's kind of a great example of how engineering logic travels. The rear engine layout isn't without downsides. Heat management is genuinely harder when the engine is enclosed in a tight rear compartment. In hot climates, or during stop-and-go city driving in summer, rear-mounted engines can run hotter than front-mounted ones. Transit agencies in Phoenix and Miami have to manage cooling more carefully than agencies in Minneapolis. The bigger shift coming is electrification. Electric transit buses, like those made by Proterra based in Burlingame, California, or BYD, which operates a major assembly plant in Lancaster, California, move the motor entirely. With an electric drivetrain, the motor can sit at the axle, and the floor layout question mostly disappears. The battery pack becomes the weight management challenge instead. This is still an evolving space, but by 2024, electric buses made up roughly 10% of new transit bus orders in the US. So the next time you step onto a city bus, you will know that a flat floor isn't an accident. It's the result of a real problem, a real solution, and a design choice that's now been quietly running US cities for over 60 years. What part surprised you most? Drop it in the comments. We read everyone. If you've got a topic you want us to look into next, let us know. And if we pick yours, we'll give you a shout out. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching Simple Why.